Hey, this is Rodney with the Rod Shop, and in this video we're going to be doing a 2000 Tundra valve cover gasket replacement. Now if you're looking at the engine, it may look a little intimidating. There are some parts to take off and hoses to disconnect, but overall it's not that hard of a job. Being a 2000 model, or even because this will cover 2000, 2004, and being that old, wire connectors and hoses get, hard and brittle, so you have to be more careful not to break them as you pull. And if you've never changed the coil packs in these, when you go to pull them out to change the valve cover gaskets, be sure to inspect the tube. You see how it has these cracks in it. If it's got those cracks, that means it's actually shooting fire out of it. It's looking, whenever a spark plug gets fired to it, or whatever is delivering a spark plug wire or coil pack or whatever, it's looking for the first and easiest place to get ground. So it's probably leaking fire out of that and causing you a little bit of a short or misfire. So you want to replace them while you're doing the valve cover gaskets. So let's dive on into the video and get started. Now if those pesky wire connectors don't want to come undone, use the trusty hammer. Just beat the crap out of it and that'll get them loose. Just kidding. You just squeeze this tab. Might sometimes just pop it out a little bit because it likes to hang, and just pry it a little bit. Just go gentle with it because these things get brittle. So when I'm squeezing it, it's not releasing it, so I have to kind of help it. That's good enough. Going in and blow things off. That's correct. But while we're blowing things off, let's just go ahead and pull the coil packs out and blow the spark plug tubes out. That way we're blowing the engine off so that debris doesn't fall down into the engine, and we're blowing the tubes out just in case there is any debris down there. When you take the plugs out, you don't want stuff falling down into the cylinders. There shouldn't be anything down in there. Go bad on their own. They just break down in the electronics of them. But if you'll see here, these things have cracks in them. So whenever your spark plugs start getting where they don't want to fire as well, the ignition has to go somewhere, so it'll back up into the coils, into these coil packs basically, and then that kind of shorts them out or makes them overheat, and it melts things inside and they don't work so good. But they also get hot over time, and these are factory. These this got 200,000 miles on them, but they got cracks in them. So any place that there's a weak insulation, that fire is going to shoot out to the closest place it can get to ground. So even though this looks really horrible, it's probably just like real small intermittent, but this is what will cause you to have that little bit of intermittent miss or a little bit of stuttering when your engine takes off. So if you're curious if your coil packs are bad, you're not really sure, you can always pull them out and take a look at them and see. And if you find cracks, they've got to be replaced. I'll put a link down in the description for this kind of tool, because anytime you're doing a rubber hose like this and you're trying to twist it and pull it, you can actually split it or crack it or rip it where you're pulling at. But if you got one of these helping to spread it while you're pulling it, it takes it off so much easier. And just for, if this will pull off, and it does, I'm just going to pull that off to make it a little bit easier to get out of my way to pull this valve cover off. most part, I'm gonna peel this back. The seal's stuck on it, there we go. That off. And just peel it back. You probably could get away without having to pull that back if you really want to wiggle it, but it just makes it like easier, and that thing just comes right off. Pretty simple. And you can see where the valve cover's been leaking. It didn't leak back here in the back. It's leaked here. Definitely there. Kind of quit there, and you can tell them you can see how it's got all this oil buildup on the bottom of the valve cover, and you can see it on the head. This is stupid, but you know, Toyota felt it was a need to put these little tabs out to keep the seal from ever popping out. Not that it ever would anyways, but I'll just get them started to come up a little bit with the screwdriver to keep from warping the whole baffle plate. Now I have no idea why Toyota decided to make the baffle have the 4 little tabs to hold the seal in. All the other manufacturers don't do that, but Toyota felt the need in it, so I guess the seal didn't pop out. And they're kind of a pain to bend the little tabs out to get the seal out, and then you got to bend them back. If all else fails, use the trusty hammer. And I just use little needle nose pliers and bend them up out of the way. If you flip it over and try to punch the seal out, if they're 200,000 miles like this, all it's going to do is just crack it apart and put holes in it. So I found from doing the other valve cover that if I get the screwdriver down there and start working the seal up, and you may be able to do it with a screwdriver if you don't have this tool, but if you use a seal puller and you get it gapped up a little bit, you can just come in here and make that easier. But you could probably work it up with a screwdriver just as well. And we'll go ahead and I'm going to do one new one so you can see what it's like. Now I've got a socket that fits, it's just a hair bit on the inside of that seal. I've also got a bearing installer that's also the exact same size as that socket to kind of help get it started. We may have to back it, depends on if it's going to bounce or not. If you put your block of wood underneath it, it might help stabilize it and keep it from bouncing around. I probably should have done that to start with, because we got seals a little bit more in on one side than the other, and they're kind of a pain once they start doing that. Because these edges, at least this brand seals, and it's Velcro, which is usually the best, they're kind of soft, so it makes it harder to drive in. If you run into that problem where it's cockeyed, you can use a flat punch, kind of work it around the seal, and just, you don't punch hard, you don't want to punch a hole through it, you just start tapping it to kind of help it down on that side. Ensure that it's in between the seal and the edge, and these things are metal frame, and that's what we're tapping on. See, now it's got it started back down flat, which will help drive it the rest of the way in. Then you got to bend your tabs back down. That one got hit, kind of bent too far back. I probably figure we'll call it in. If there's any debris down in this groove, you got to clean it out. Luckily this one doesn't have anything in it, but you want to get the oil out of it. Just so you know, there is a right and a left seal. Found out the hard way, the first time I started, that these little curves in it didn't match, so there is a right and a left. I don't really recommend using any sealers to put the seal in with. Just set it down in there, as long as the groove is clean of debris and oil. And just seat it real good. Make sure it's evenly set in there all the way around. I do, however, put sealer on the corners. This is a slower drying sealer, so I don't have to worry about it, but if you don't already have the head cleaned up, then you want to do this right before you put it on. I just put it right here on this bend for the curve to go around the timing or the cam stuff. If you noticed, if it's never been touched, your Toyota will have a sealer right here in the corners, like this. Now you can see that the Toyota has a sealer right here where I was putting the sealer on the gasket, or on the seal for that. Try to scrape it outward so it doesn't go down in the head. we got to get the spark plug tube seals lipped into for the valve cover to go on. Don't try to force it down. I would not recommend using the screwdriver if you can help it. I try to use plastic tools. This is like a plastic trim tool. And you don't really push down hard trying to get this thing to go. You just kind of let it. You may have to push just a little bit in the beginning to get it started. Started. And now it's down. Now I just got to put the bolts in, and they torque it 84 inch-pounds. Which, if you have a foot-pound wrench only, it's going to be 7 foot-pounds. But most foot-pound torque wrenches aren't correct around below 10, so you want to go with an inch-pound torque wrench. If you don't have one, then just evenly torque it as best you can, with like snug and then just a little bit of turn. I'm just running these up. In other words, I'm not trying to tighten them, I'm just running them up to get the valve cover to sit down flat before I start actually torquing them. And I don't torque them to the 84 inch-pounds right off the bat. I kind of work around till I know the valve cover's sitting flat. If you don't have an inch-pound torque wrench, and you want to try to get it even to start off with, you can just use a nut driver with a 10mm socket on it, because all these heads of these bolts are 10 millimeters. If you torque as hard as you can, you'll probably get about 40 to 45 inch-pounds, maybe at the most. If you did that all the way around, it'd be even, but then you're going to have to probably turn it about a quarter to not quite a half a turn. Probably somewhere between a quarter and a half turn each to get it to about the right spec. Putting the new coil packs on is pretty easy. Just stick it down the hole, feel it snap onto the spark plug, and then after you put the bolt in, they're done. Other than connecting the wire. You can probably tighten these, if you got the inch-pound torque wrench on, you probably tighten them down to about 75, 80, somewhere between 70 and 80 inch-pounds. I'm just using a small 1/4 inch ratchet to get the torque. I would not recommend putting one with a air gun or an electric tool or anything like that. Okay, on the driver's side, you can't get this, without a lot of difficulty, you can't get this valve cover off because of all these hoses are going to come straight up. So instead of having to disconnect these two and take a chance of breaking them, it comes off this emissions box over here really relatively easy. So, of course, you don't want to really bend them a lot. If they're old, they'll crack. But hoses don't even stick that thing.
And you got these two hoses here. There's probably no way to get them off that easy. Pliers. One tip to removing this valve cover on the left side of the engine, or the driver's side, is remove this little module right here. You can see a clip at the top. You just squeeze it and pull the thing up and just lay it down the side, because when you try to pull the valve cover off, it bangs into it. So just remove this and it'll make the job a lot easier.
If you're into this job and it's really frustrating, just smash it.
Hear what we're hitting. It's gonna be fun to put back on, that's for sure. The gasket. No, I don't know. Anytime you change the valve cover gaskets, you want to just ensure there's no leaking any oil. So before you take off driving, kind of just watch around the valve covers and even underneath and see if you got any oil drips.
As you can see, this job takes a little time. It's not really that hard. Matter of fact, on the Tundra, you've got quite a bit of room to get the valve covers out. You've got to wiggle the driver's side out a little bit, but overall it's not that bad of a job. It should at most take you maybe 2 hours to do the job, and that's mostly because you've got to deal with the little tabs and getting them bent and pulling the seals out and putting them, because sometimes those seals break in a couple of pieces. You may also know this is also a good time to do a tune-up. If you have not changed the spark plugs or the coil packs in 100,000 miles, if you know it's got 100,000, it's time to change them. They're good for about 100,000. Really, I like to change them around 80 just to keep everything like new, but still 100,000 is at the point where you should be changing. If you notice it's missing or shimming and shaking, it's also probably a good idea. Also, if you notice you've got idle problems and stuff, it could be the throttle body. This very same vehicle had a really clogged, dirty throttle body, and if that's the case, you can watch my video on how to do the cleaning of the throttle body. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and always check back because I'm always working on something crazy. See you in the next one.